Hello everybody. I know you've heard the saying, I'm at the end of my rope, or you've heard people say, I just can't keep going on, or it's all over, or I don't know where to go from here. But I want to tell you a story. In this is my 20th video. I've done more, but this is the 20th one I've published on the internet. I want to tell you a story about a guy once who felt the same way. This was 2,000 years ago, and it's not Jesus I'm talking about. I'm talking about another guy, actually. He was a criminal, and he had gotten in trouble, and he'd broken some laws. I think he probably murdered somebody. And one morning, you know, he was in the jail cell. He was waked up. He was probably kicked. He dragged to his feet, and he was told, "Let's go." And these Roman soldiers took him out, and they started walking him up a hill, and they gave him a big old cross to carry, and he had two other guys with him, and he saw these two other guys carrying crosses too. One of them was really beat up, looked like he'd been beaten a lot with whips and cords, and he had a crown of thorns stuck on his head. But this guy didn't. This guy was just probably healthy, probably hadn't had all that treatment yet, but was carrying this cross uphill. And at one point, the guy carrying the cross up in front of him fell and stumbled and couldn't carry it anymore, and they made this black guy carry his cross for him and keep on going up the hill with him. And they all kept going, and they walked up this short hill. It wasn't super long. It was a walk, a climb. They get to the top of the hill, and this guy knew what was happening to him. He knew this was the last day of his life. He knew they were going to crucify him. And that's the way the Romans did their executions. It was lethal injection day in Texas for a threesome. I mean, he knew that. He knew that he was gone after this. And he was probably desperate as he struggled up the hill. He was probably angry. Why did this happen? How can I let them happen? He was probably looking for a way to escape. Probably quite broken too. But they got him up the top of the hill, and all of them, they laid him down. They tied their ropes. They tied their hands onto the beams, the big beams, probably 4x4 or 4x6 beams. We don't know for sure. Maybe it's poles. And they drove spikes through his hands. And most people think they drove them not through the hand that you've always heard, because that couldn't hold much anyway. But the way they crucified him was they drove it through the hand, right here at the base of the hand, where it drove through. It didn't hit any nerves, and you could still feel everything else. It was extremely painful, but it went through and it held the body on that joint, that wrist joint. And then they drove a nail through that hand, and they pinned him to the cross. And then they put one foot over the other one, and they drove the nail through the upper top of the part of the ankle or the foot. And so this was all horribly painful. This guy was probably screaming out in pain and crying, and so were the other two people being, killed with him, being, executed with him that day. And at this point in time, it was about 9 in the morning or so, and 9:30 in the morning, maybe something like that. And then they raised this guy up, and there was a slot, we think, on the back of the cross. Archaeologists, everybody think there was a slot on the back of this cross, and they would raise it up and then shove it and drop it into place on an upright beam that stayed there all the time. And the upright beam was anywhere from 8 to 15 feet tall. We don't know, but they hung this criminal up on this cross, and they dropped it in. And some of you have seen the old movie Spartacus, and in Spartacus, there was an army of 300, 400, 500 of these people crucified by the Romans, and this was several hundred years before Christ when Spartacus took place. And I mean the old movie Spartacus, not the new, lewd, gross one that's on pay-per-view or whatever. But when they dropped him in his place, I'm sure there was a lot of pain. I'm sure there was sweat and blood, tears in his eyes. He couldn't see well. But then started the last 2 hours of this guy's life. And look, folks, if there's been anybody in life, been anybody you've ever heard of that was at the end of their rope, this guy was at the end of his rope. And at first he joined in with the other criminal. It may have been his cohort in crime. It may just have been another guy, and they made fun of this. This one guy in the middle of them was beat up. He'd been beat up real bad. But above his head it said Judah Rex, or King of the Jews, in Greek. And then it said it probably in Aramaic, and it said it in Roman, in Latin. It said it in all three languages. It said King of the Jews. And so they started making fun of him, like, King of the Jews, you fool. Why, if you're the king, help us out. Get us down from here, Jack. Let's go if you're such a tough guy. And they started mocking him, because obviously all the people down below the cross, a lot of them were mocking him, and people were laughing at him, and people were making fun of him. And so these guys started it, but to this one criminal it just didn't seem right. And at some point his heart broke, and he realized, you know what? If this guy is the King of the Jews, I need his help. And he looked at him, because I think some people believe he might have seen it. He might have been close enough to have heard it, but he heard this guy in the middle that was King of the Jews, right? He heard him look down at the people that were mocking him and laughing at him and ridiculing him, and they probably heard him utter the words, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And this other criminal probably, at some point in time when he was hanging there dying on the cross, heard that and saw that this man was not ridiculing back, was not screaming in anger and lashing out like he and the other criminal were. And he asked him, he said, "Lord, when you come into your throne, will you please remember me? Remember me when you come into your throne." I mean, hey, that's a pretty strong statement. It's like, you know what? I'm at the end of my rope. I need help. Remember me when you come into your throne. And sure enough, Jesus looked at him. That was Jesus, right? The guy in the middle. I know you've already figured that one out. But Jesus Christ looked over as he was dying himself in excruciating pain from not just being hung on the cross and pierced with big spikes, but also just from the torment of dying. He looked at him and he said, "Look, today, this day, before the sun is set today, you will be with me in paradise." That's pretty cool. That guy got salvation and found God at the very end of his life, at the very end of his rope, right then. And the reason I tell that story today is, you know what? A lot of you guys and girls, and a lot of us, get to the point where we're at the end of our rope. We don't know what to do. We don't know who to turn to. But all I can tell you is God does not make you walk a tight rope He doesn't say you can be perfect, and once you're perfect, I'll accept you. If you're hanging there at the end and you're on the rope, you're on the cross, you're whatever, and you look at him, you say, "Lord, remember me, help me, please." He will do that. If you have a broken heart, and if you have a contrite heart, and if you humble yourself, and if you ask God for help, He'll help you. He loves us. That's why He went to that cross, is because He loved us so much. He didn't have to. That was the King of Kings. That was the most powerful, the most potent human, most potent person that had ever been born. That was the most powerful creature that there has ever been in creation. Jesus Christ was fully God and fully man in one body. All He had to do, guys and girls, was snap His fingers. Bad snap. Snap His fingers and destroy the world. All He had to do was say, "You know what? Blow this pop stand, folks. This pain is too much. Father, I don't think I can do this. I'm sorry. I know it's your will, but you know what? These people are ticking me off now, and there's other ways we can handle this." And He could have just stepped down off the cross and just obliterated the world and said, "You know what? Let's start over." But He didn't, because He loved you and me, and He thought of the future. Because if He'd have done that, it would have destroyed the future for us. So just remember that when you get to the end of your rope, or if you know somebody else who's at the end of the rope, teach them the Bible. Get them to go to the Bible. Get them to go join a good church that teaches the Bible. Get them to read it. Get them to pray together with you. Help them out. Come alongside them and wrap your arm around them and say, "Come on, I'll help you through this. You don't have to do it alone." Just like Jesus looked at that guy and said, "Look, today, before the sun is set today, you will be with me in paradise. You are going where I'm going." That's the key. The key is we've got to help others get to the right place in their life. Because someday we may be beat up. We may be in trouble. And we may darn sure need them to help us. Because you know what? What goes around comes around. And in the same way we measure out stuff in our lives, if we measure out garbage and bile and ugliness and bitterness, we'll get that back. But if we measure out love and compassion and caring and concern, we'll get that back. And we need to love others and bless others. And we need to live a radical Christian life, just like Jesus told us to. Just like Jesus said in John 13 and John 16 when He said, "You know what? A new commandment I give to you." Jesus' commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. A new commandment Jesus gave to you and me, that we love one another the way He loved us. And that means we need to sacrifice ourselves for each other and sacrifice our time and our energy and our life for each other. Okay? God bless y'all. Bye-bye.